Why Canadian movies suck. That's a picture of me when I went through a phase where I wanted to take my picture with every lumbersexual that I saw. I don't know if they have lumbersexuals elsewhere, but they do here, where they dress like lumberjacks with their stupid beards. They're perfectly trimmed beards. Well, Canadian culture pretty much sucks. The political situation's pretty good. Like, they have good health care and everything. But the culture is kind of a joke. This comes to mind because I'm watching this movie called Life Changer, and I was shocked to see that it was unabashedly filmed in Toronto. It actually doesn't shy away from the fact that it was made in Toronto, which I thought it was kind of funny because I'd be embarrassed if I was making... I'd want to hide the fact that it was Toronto. I live in Toronto, by the way. I was born in Toronto. My parents were born in Toronto. My grandparents were born in Toronto. So when I say Toronto sucks, I'm kind of an authority, I suppose. Canadian movies suck because Canada has an incredible self-consciousness, incredible insecurity about what it means to be Canadian. They're obsessed with it. And that trickles into the whole film industry and the grants industry. First of all, there is no film industry. That's why every single movie and TV show that's made in Canada is funded by grants. Because none of this stuff ever makes any money, and it never gets popular. So you can only make a movie or TV show in Canada if you get a grant. You only get a grant if you please the grant people. And the grant people, all they care about is Canadian content. And what the hell is that, right? You'd think that anything would be Canadian content if it's made in Canada. But no, it has to either have racial diversity, because that's a real Canadian thing, or it has to have like Tim Hortons, like Canadian staples, like in the background, or like feature something that's, I mean, the Group of Seven, Margaret Atwood, something that's a Canadian staple. Mounties. So basically, you can only make a movie in Canada if you tick all the boxes that they require. Diversity, Mounties. It has to take place in a Canadian city. Canadian landmarks, for all I know. Just as much Canadian stuff as possible. Stereotypical Canadian stuff. Not just Canadian, but stereotypical, embarrassing Canadian stuff. So the only kind of person that would be willing to make such a boring movie would be a very boring person. And a not a very intelligent person either, because intelligent people need to be stimulated. They wouldn't want to write this kind of garbage. There's a very successful TV show called The Handmaid's Tale, which is based on Margaret Atwood, right? The only Canadian writer's work. And it occurred to me, if it's really successful and it's doing really well, then there's no way it was made in Canada, right? Like, if it's well done, then there's no way it was made in Canada. And I looked it up, and of course it was made in the States. Now, I'm not a believer in capitalism, and I'm not a fan of the States for that. But it's better. It's better to seek a movie that's going to make money than to seek a movie that's going to have Canadian content or diversity or whatever. The former has a much better chance of being good than the latter. And the sad thing is, and the ironic thing, I suppose, is that American movies are starting, popular movies are starting to resemble Canadian movies with their inclusion of diversity and all of that, checking off all those boxes. They're starting to become pathetically Canadian in all the pathetic ways, like Captain Marvel and the emptiness of that story anyways. And even the Oscars, I was just talking to somebody who was saying people don't even go to celebrities don't even go to the Oscars anymore, because the Oscars are just given out to the token whatever, and they're not given out on merit, based on merit, which is exactly what Canadian film is all about. And so I guess in a way, it's no longer these movies in the States are starting to become about an agenda rather than making money. And making money is, again, ironically better, I think, than clicking all the boxes on agendas. I mean, think about how pathetic that is for Canadian film, that the only films that are made are the ones that are funded by the government. That's more like welfare. It's like charity. These are charity movies that nobody's going to care about, everybody's going to laugh at. When's the last time there was a good Canadian movie or TV show? Probably Trailer Park Boys. And that, I guarantee, that was funded by the government. And on an overall level, this is why people laugh at Canadians, because they are so insecure, they don't have an identity. They're constantly trying to prove that they have an identity, which makes it even more obvious that they don't have one. It's like a kid at school who's trying to be a rocker or something and trying to listen to the music that rockers listen to, but you can tell that it's not really them. And again, the irony is that for all of Canada's obsession with Canadian content, they're preventing Canadian content by not letting new movies and films come out and TV shows come out. In your obsession with Canadian content, you're never going to let Canada be more than Mounties. And if you want to put this to the test, try watching a Canadian movie. Like, go online or go on Netflix, look for a movie that's made in Canada, and wait till you see how crappy it is, how bad everything is. And try to find a Canadian movie that doesn't have a statement on gender, on sexuality, like gay, lesbian, and doesn't have a statement on diversity. Something in there that promotes it and says, oh, we're definitely for that. But meanwhile, that statement has nothing at all to do with the story. And it's becoming that way in America. Now try to find an American movie, United States movie, that doesn't have that as well. If you support gays, click like. If you respect blacks, comment. If you think women are people too, click the notification bell. And if you care about sick children, subscribe.